The Farm Bill is whatever choices you make this spring, summer, fall, whenever they decide it's the official deadlines. You're not going to know whether you did the right thing until 2018, 19, 2020. Who knows for sure? There'll be a lot of benchmarks along the way, like in October of 15 when the first Farm Bill check comes out. And if you signed up for a program that doesn't pay and the neighbor signed up for one that does pay, well, you might be wrong for a while, but you might not be wrong next year. So it's the whole thing that we are going to try to understand here. And I want you to make wise choices and informed choices. So that's my goal here. All right. Well, this is a little bit of the legalistic stuff. We try to stay reasonably in cooperation, in compliance, with the federal government. And the whole point here is the justice for all. The FSA programs, the insurance programs, we can't discriminate. You got to treat everybody fair. Small farmer, large farmer, whatever you are. We just let people know that we're here to serve all of them as a crop insurance agency selling federal crop insurance. And then the generic disclaimers that I wrote, not a lawyer. And basically what I'm trying to say here, hey, we read this stuff, we're researching, we're trying to figure it all out. And, work with me. And we'll try to answer the questions as we come along, but it's really going to be a public service is what our intention is. We're not here to be hardcore sales by any means. We got 3 programs. You're going to be asked by the Farm Service Agency whether you want to be in the agricultural risk coverage or the price loss coverage. That's the question they're going to ask. And the agricultural risk coverage is really a replacement for the ACRE program that some of you people got involved in, and you're going, what does that Fran tell me about? My guy, the ACRE didn't pay in the last 4 or 5 years, but what did we have happen in the last 4 or 5 years? Below trend line yields, record high prices, and ACRE doesn't work when incomes are rising. It's a safety net when things collapse. So maybe ARC is the thing to go to today. We don't know for sure yet. Farm papers tell you that it's probably the right thing to do to begin with, but let's kind of review what's really happening here. The price loss coverage is another FSA program. And this price loss coverage program is if cash prices fall below the reference price, is the term they use. They used to use target prices or other things, but they all have a little bit different meanings. But if it falls below the reference price, you will be paid. Reference price of corn, for example, is $3.70. If the national average price is $3.69, you get a penny a bushel, times some bushels that we're going to talk about a little later. Is it your bushels per acre? Is it county bushels per acre? What are they? We'll talk about that. And then the supplemental coverage option, that is a shallow loss program that's administered through crop insurance agencies if and only if you select the price loss coverage. So I'm here to run through the Farm Bill, the ARC, and the PLC, and give you a glimpse of what's going on here. And if you elect the PLC, you may consider the supplemental. That's what's going on. Now, the PLC program, again, is going to talk about reference prices. So I put a few of them up here. The most popular is corn, $3.70, $8.40 beans, $5.50 wheat, whether it's winter or spring, it's just generic, and barley, $4.95. That one kind of confuses me, $4.95, because normally you think of barley as a percentage of corn, and it's usually somewhat less in most of the farm programs, but it probably isn't going to matter a hill of beans because there's not a lot of barley out there to gather base acres on. But what this tells me is that if you pick PLC, national cash price, anything below $3.70, you can be indemnified through the program or have a payment. So that tells me if you can figure out a way to farm at $3.70 corn, it gives you a pretty good base. but I'm not so sure you can farm the 370 corn. By the way, a marketing year is always September 1 through August 31 the next year. So our 2014 marketing year begins next September as we come up to it and goes all the way through August of 15. We're finishing the 13 marketing year. We'll start it at September 1 and we will end it August 31. Now, the Farm Bill still has a non-recourse loans. They're still available out there. So if at the end of the year you want to have a low interest loan, you can get $1.95 for your corn or $5 for your soybeans. And believe it or not, there's still LDPs available, loan deficiency payments. So if it goes below that, you can collect the loan deficiency payment, but it better not happen. Just, things have changed. It just better not happen. All right. The PLC or ARC, again, by farm number, for the length of the Farm Bill. All selections must be agreed upon by both the landowner and the operator or operators. So anybody that has an interest in that has to agree to it. So you gotta, everybody that rents land here, you're gonna have to go out and have a little visit with your landlords and get them to sign up. Even if you got a 1-year lease for the 2014 crop, you got to visit with them and make a selection for the duration of the Farm Bill. That stays with the land. If you don't come to agreement, or your landlord is somebody living in Massachusetts, and you just don't see him, maybe it's even a trust or something. If you don't make a decision, you will be defaulted into the PLC program. You will be defaulted to that. And the penalty fee for not making that decision is no 2014 payments. So remember that October 15, that'll be the first time a 2014 payment comes about. Because the 2014 payments will be there when we have the result of the 2014 marketing year. The 2014 marketing year ends August 31 of 15. Give them a little time to calculate the numbers. September comes, and the payments will be made on both the ARC and the PLC in, I'm guessing, October 15. There again, that's a FSA office issue, but just kind of thinking the strategy through. And, I think about old farm programs where they gave you an advance early and maybe the balance later, but I don't know if that'll happen. I would be surprised because things can change to cause that advance to become gone. So I think we got to be a little cautious about that. All right. Now, as long as I have your all attention here, the Farm Bill really did have several things related directly to crop insurance, and some of these are really pretty darn exciting. I mean, I think that the people that wrote this Farm Bill, at least from these aspects, did my audience here, our crop farmers across the nation, some real justice. Number one, being the enterprise unit structure. We'll talk about that in the next slide, but the fact of life is, when you're selecting an enterprise unit, all the corn in the county, it's like one giant field. The cost share of that portion of it is rather large, and they made this permanent. So this, before it was just there, and whether they're going to have it or not, but it's set there now. So this is wonderful news. One of the most interesting ones, enterprise unit, not just by the corn or soybeans in the county, but by irrigated corn in one pot, dryland corn in the others. Wonderful project, because I got a lot of people saying I'd love to go to this enterprise, but my gosh, I got 1,000 acres of irrigated and 1,000 acres of dryland, and if we get a crop problem, I'm watering and trying to get a yield out of this. And then you're successful. And all of that gain of those bushels that you paid, electricity or fuel or water charges, all came over to mitigate the loss that you would have had on your dry land. And you go, this doesn't work for me. So they've been staying to optical units, which has been very expensive. So this is a neat deal. Another thing is you can have a different level of insurance. So if you pick the revenue protection plan on your irrigated land or on your corn, you can have one level on irrigated and another level on your dry land. And to me, this is really interesting. Now, the first thoughts a lot of people come up with is, okay, all right, I can really drop my irrigated coverage down and really concentrate on my dry land coverage. Well, that may be true, but the insurance product is rather interesting. And a revenue product is based upon production and price. So if you start looking at the irrigated cost, there's not a lot of perils. The biggest perils are gone. You're watering. But you still have frost. You still have frost early and late. You may just plain have a cool summer. You don't quite get the crop to maturity. So you've got some underlying production costs in this RP policy, but it's primarily price protection. So as you begin to think about marketing, what this will do is say, you know, I have a 75% enterprise unit where the cost share is 77%, you pay 23%. And if you allocate those costs against the marketing aspect and trying to protect that 180 bushel corn yield, you divide it out, you may find yourself a very inexpensive put or downside price protection. So don't discount it. Take a look at all of the opportunities. And this will all be coming about. These are 2015 changes. These are not available for 2014. This is an ugly one. And, you know, to get the votes, they got to have conservation. I mean, there's a big political deal out here. I don't know a farmer that isn't concerned about farming properly and correctly. Nobody wants to see their land go down the river. They just really don't. You have to be in compliance. The Farm Bill says if you're out of compliance, you've got 2 years to figure it out and get it done. Otherwise, you can still buy crop insurance, but they're not going to share the cost. So if you're paying 23% of an RP 75 policy, all of a sudden your cost share of 77 goes away and your cost goes from $20 or $18 or $15 an acre goes to 60. Ouch. That really makes you think about it. Compliance with conservation, they're putting some teeth in it. This is an interesting one that came about, and I'll reference you to the FSA people to identify what a beginning farmer is. And as I looked on the websites, there's just about every one you look at is a little bit different, whether it's the NRCS, conservation people, FSA, whatever they define as a beginning farmer, they're different. But we'll figure it out what it is before 2015, and you get an additional 10% cost share. So that example, that 75 enterprise unit I was referring to, that you pay 23% on, it isn't 23, it isn't 10% of the 23, it's going to 13. It's going to become very, very inexpensive for beginning farmers to insure crop, and I don't know for how long to become beginning. And this is one that a lot of people have talked about. If your county has a devastating yield, less than 50% of the expected yield, you don't have to include that in your database because you would have participated in that. And when you really get down that far, it tends to hurt your database and affects you for a multitude of years. It's not likely to happen. I question whether there's ever been a 50% reduction in the corn or soybeans in any of our counties in this region. I really question that. So it's really not likely to happen. All right. Now we're going to talk a little bit about what's going on with crop insurance. And I think these are rather interesting. I talked a little bit about this number right here, the 23% at 75. This is the percent paid by the farmer. And as you go from 23, you go up to 80, goes to 32, up to 85, 47%. While the underlying insurance cost is rising, you're paying a larger share. So that's why I like to look at what does it cost to go from one to the other. So many dollars, $7, we'll say, $3, $12, I don't care. But what do I get for that money? What's my ratio? Then I like to ask my clients, what is it you're trying to do? How often are you going to have a loss? Does this make sense? And then the other side of it is that maybe you got a goal of so many dollars an acre that you want to insure. Well, then that changes a little bit about how you look at it. But realize that you're going up 9%, but 9 into this. Help me out here, 2.5? I mean, you're going up, 9 into 32, 20-some% increase in premium. Because 9 divided by the 23 is what you end up doing. And the same with here. I was reading an article from Illinois, University of Illinois, and they said that the most dollars per acre are spent right here. The 32%, this is where the largest dollar cost to the federal government lies, or the greatest benefit falls into the 80 at 32%, or the 80 where they're paying 68%. So the dollars per acre, this is kind of the optimal level. The numbers up here that maybe you're not familiar with, ARP, ARP, and AYP, these are the former county-based plans. The GRIP plan and the GRP plan. They've been renamed. There's really insignificant differences in the two policies from a year ago to this year. And these farmer paid premiums are about the same. And one they added is the SCO, where they're going to charge you 35% of the cost. Just kind of bear that in mind. So it's really a county-based plan, and you can see that all of the county-based plans here cost you more. So this is an interesting thing. They're trying to make a very reasonable cost to a shallow loss program as their design. We'll see if they really made it work later here. And this is the old standby. Optional unit, every section of land settled on its own. Costs you quite a bit, but it's very, very dynamic. There's no doubt about it. If you've got highly variable soils, you really got to give some real strong consideration to that program. County or farm payment selection. Which shall you choose? Wow. You know, that's a tough call for me to make. And I look at this, and embedded in the program is, if you select to settle your FSA farm program on the county numbers, whatever your base was, if you had 1,000 acres of corn base or 100 acres of corn base, they're going to pay you on 85% of the base acres. So if there is an indemnity or a payment coming, they're going to reduce that payment to 85% if you've agreed to settle on the county. If you want to settle on your personal, that reduction is going to be 35%, or they're going to pay you on 85%. So there's a penalty to taking your own. And the fact of life is, in my opinion, they're really driving these things towards the county base. There's a lot less work to it. It's sign up, you know what it is. You can cut checks fairly simple. If you're dealing with your own personal production, then you got to have proven yields, and then you got to have reported yields and different things. And things tend to, they get a little dicey. And then it even gets worse when that square mile that you're farming, you might have 3 landlords, and they might be in different programs. And it's all covered by one insurance thing. So we get one appraisal by the insurance company, but we have to try to figure out which ones were which for the ARC or the PLC. That's going to take a while to figure that out. Just doing the math, the personal yields, to make this work over the county, your personal yield, because you're giving up 20 points here, is got to be 31% better than the county. This is just simple math for that to have the same effect. And your personal production, should you have a problem that year, you got to drop 23% more than the county to make up for that 20 points. These are the reasons why I think a lot of county things are going to be chosen. There will be places on your farm, especially because you can select by farm number, that it might be here, but that's going to take a lot of math. And you know, I'm very willing to sit down with anybody, client or not, plug in their database, run it into my computer. We're designing spreadsheets and say, if this happens, this is what will happen. If this happens, this is what will happen. We'll give you some guidance if that's something you want to do. Personal choice, we really think it's going to happen mostly by the county. All right, we got benchmark yields. Everybody has the chance to update their benchmark yields, the personal yields at the FSA. Now, we haven't had to report these haven't been required to report these for quite a few years. Some of you have continually reported them. But you can come back and you can reestablish your yields by farm number. And if those numbers are better than the history, you get them. I mean, you can make that selection. And I think it's rather interesting. And if I'm not mistaken, it's 9, 10, 11, and 12. Now, 9 was a little dicey here. Late, wet fall, had a hard time getting the corn dry, different things like that. But 10, 11, and 12 were just a real blessing around here. It really was. So I think most people should be able to reestablish their yields, and then you get a benchmark from them. And again, there's a little ding on it. Well, whatever that yield is you set, we're going to take it down 10%, and that's what we're going to use to settle your stuff. So as you go to individual stuff, there's a few little nicks to keep things from not being appropriate, I guess. All right, the agricultural risk coverage. Again, it's similar to the ACRE program. Now this is where you guys make some notes, keep these PowerPoints. The price portion of the projected revenue, like I said, it's a revenue contract. Price times production equals dollars. The price portion is the 5-year Olympic average of the national cash price. It'll be times the yield portion is what it's going to be. So it's the Olympic average, the last 5 years, 2013, which we won't settle until August 31 of 14, 12, 11, 10, and 9. Throw the low price out and throw the high price out. So we're going to throw the 355 out that we had for national cash price in 9. We're going to throw the 689 out that we had as a cash price in 12. And we're going to come up with another number. Not exactly certain what that other number will be, but I'll show you this a little later. Whether that's 518 or 532 or 5 something is what it's going to be. Times the yield portion of the Olympic County yield. Take the last 5 years. We just got notice last week or 10 days ago what the county yields were. So we know what the 13 yield was. Look back at the 12, 11, 10, 9. Throw the high and low out. Multiply that by the marketing year average prices, and you get the covered revenue. Or the projected revenue. Now the covered revenue is 86% of that. It's a 14% deductible. You're covered at 86%. So whatever that number is, that'll be your covered revenue. The maximum payment that you can ever get is 10% of the projected revenue. Quick example. Marketing year average, $5. Olympic average of 5 years. Olympic average yield, 140. 5 times 140, $700. 10% maximum payment, $70 before the county base acre adjustment and before the individual 65% adjustment. The actual revenue will be looked at. So when we take ARC, if you select that for 2014, we're going to have the projected revenue times 86% to get to the covered revenue. We're going to hold that number aside here, whatever that number is. Then we're going to take a look at the actual production in the county or on your farm. You select that. And we're going to take a look at the new 2014 year marketing average, Sep 1 of 14 to August 31 of 15. Multiply those two out. And if it's less than the covered revenue, a payment will be made. Price loss coverage. This one is really easy. There's not much to this. It's very similar to the counter-cyclical payment. And it states in the Farm Bill, if the marketing year national cash price falls below the reference price, you get the difference. If it's $3.50 a bushel and the reference price is $3.70, 20 cents a bushel times your payment yield. If it's $4 a bushel, 0 times your payment yield. Nothing. Well, Sigurd's going to be my driver now. So we're going to give you some real-life examples. We're just going to take a quick look here at what some of these numbers are. You know, we're going to settle this August 31 of 14 here. We're going to get the final 2013. And we got this as the hot cell where, oh, the question was in the benchmark yield setting, are they going to throw the high and low out of the 4 years that they're using? And I'll defer to the FSA, but from my reading, I didn't see anything about Olympic averages or anything related to that. All right. These are facts of life. 355 or 09, 518, 622, 689. And we're just going to demonstrate how this changes your Olympic average price that you're going to use for 2014. At 455, it generates a 532 Olympic average price that will be used in the ARC model. And if we go down to 415, we go, all right, you're going to use 518. And we can move these numbers up or down. We're partway through the year. We've already set Sep, Oct, Nov, Dec, Jan, Feb. And we're working on March right now. We got half the year set. It's hard to move them. We're in that range. Okay? How does this work then? And what are we doing here? So we got the ARC, talking about our crop year. Just for notation, there's your marketing year. These are the prices that we're dealing with. So if we use 455, we get this 532. Our actual, we got to move this number right here, Sig. All right. Now, our 5-year Olympic average is 139.4 because we're going to throw this number out and we're going to throw out this number right here. We're going to average 1, 2, 3, 139.4. That happens to be the Barron County ones, but I can tell you all your other counties, it ain't going to change a lot because when you throw the high and low out, you get a pretty narrow average. So we can do that for any county. All right, so what we got coming here, if we take the 455 or 432 or whatever, times 139.5, we don't know this number yet, but we're close. We know this number already. We're going to come up with $741 of expected county revenue. And we're going to take that down by 14%, down to 86%. And we're going to come up with, under no circumstances will we pay you more than $74.12. That's the maximum. All right. Now, if we come up with 455 at 139 in the fall, if we actually have a normal county yield, match it perfectly. And if we match the prior year, if we match what we have this year, just say next year's identical cash price, We don't know what these are going to be. But if that happened, you're going to have county revenue of $634. And 637 from 634, you get $3.15 adjusted by 85% or 65%. You get $2 or $3. If we have a normal yield and a normal static price, do something. You see a lot of the newspapers and farm journals and ag webs and all of this stuff talking about central Iowa, $70, $80 an acre. I saw a headline that says, how to get $100. I read their program, the highest number is 86, and they didn't take it by 85% yet. But the headline was pretty astonishing. And your landlords are going to be reading those headlines. This is just the way it works. Now, let's do a little changing here. Sigurd, why don't you run some numbers in here for me? All right. If we drop our price to $4.15, we go from $4.55 down 40 cents. All right. Now, all the numbers here are the same, but our final yield, unchanged at $139 times $4.15, you get $5.78, or $58, adjusted by the 85 or 65. $50, a $38 payment. Now that's astonishing. That's different. That's big. There are a lot of dollars here. Sig, you want to give us another example? If we drop to $3.80 and don't change our yield at all, $63. We capped out. Notice our loss is $107, but we can't be higher than $74. That's the 10%. So they're going to pay $63. That is the maximum. You could take prices to $1 a bushel, and it's going to pay you $63. All right, let's try to take a little look at what does it do if we adjust production. So let's leave next year's cash price the same as the current year. And let's just play around with production a little. What is the impact? If we go to the lowest year we've had in the last 5, heaven forbid, I hope we don't come back in and barren and have this tough yield again. But if we do, 455 times 110, $502. $134 loss. Capped out at 63. That's what you get. Sig, let's run another number. Let's take this 146.7, the same yield we had in 2011. Leaving cash price the same. Oh, we just went up about 7 bushels to the acre. Look at your payment. So if you have a good yield and you have a steady price, nada. Okay? That's just the way the calculation is. And let's do another one. Let's take the 09 yield. All right, so at the 09 yield, $23 or 18. So you can kind of play around with these numbers, and I'll be more than happy, all of our agents are more than happy to sit down, because we study these things. Not saying that you can't, but we'll just guide you through the numbers if you're willing to do that. All right. Sig, let's move on. That's ARC in its general form on a 1-year evaluation. Okay. The PLC. All right, 1-year evaluation, 2014, $3.90, $4.55. I don't care what number you put in there. If it's over $3.70, you know what you get? Nothing. Reference price is $3.70. If national cash price is over $3.70, you get nothing. Okay? That's why the newspapers and the farm journals are telling you to go to the ARC for 2014. But I really feel you got to take this a step further, because, as my friend Sig would say, is a bird in the hand worth 2 in the bush. A bird in the hand says that the likelihood of getting any money under the PLC is small. And if you do get money out of the PLC, if you remember the other screen, you max out the other one, is what you're going to do. Unless we have a monster yield. But you're pretty well maxing out. And that's what the magazines are talking about. But I contend a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush. But you know, I was a baseball fan and I think about statistics. And you know, when the guy's batting, hits the ball 3 times out of 10, you got a 300 batting average. I think my catching ratio is better than 50%. So I'm going to be all right. I'm going to make an intelligent decision. And I'm going to hope my catching ratio is 0.6 or 0.7 or 0.8, and I'm going to do better. Looking at the basic facts for 1 year, the ARC on corn is the way to go. Let's move on. If, in fact, the next year, so if we come down in price, we have a monster crop in the nation, not projecting, you know, anything but trend lines, all I think a guy can project today. We got issues going on in the Ukraine, you know, we got different things happening, Lord knows what it'll be. And if you lower prices, the PLC can pay. And if you have a bearish inclination, the ARC, that 10% limit will run out of gas. You may pay well the first year and the second year, but as it comes down, it's going to slow down. It's not going to pay. So late in the years, ARC is the answer today with what we know, but it depends on what you want to protect, and we're going to look at a little bit further here. All right. There again, these are all adjusted by 85 or 65 depending on what you want to do. And as we look at this is the reason I say you have to have more bushels in there, X% if you have the farm, to overcome that 20-point dock. All right, so let's take a look at the next one. The supplemental coverage option. You can only purchase the supplemental coverage option if you select the PLC. The ARC is a revenue-based product. PLC is a price-based product from the FSA. If you take the price base, they say you can come in with the shallow loss program, SCO, but you're going to pay 35% of the real cost. So now let's take a look at what does that do for you. All right. I just picked the 75% coverage. And the reason I picked the 75% coverage is if I take a look at every policy I have in my agency, I think it would be the greatest number, but just slightly ahead of the 80. And I can speak of that for prior years. In 2014 crop sales, we have more 80s coming into play. And I'll tell you that there's a couple reasons why there's more 80s coming in. And I'm talking about overall. The volatility of the Chicago Board of Trade prices that were set in the last 5 days of February for corn and beans, especially beans, were at its record low. Volatility drives the price of crop insurance, along with the price of futures. But primarily it drives the price of crop insurance. We are cheap. We had unbelievably steady markets. If we'd have put the last 5 days in there, it'd have been paying a lot more this year, guys and gals. So it's just the way volatility works. So you got blessed a few years ago. I don't remember exactly what year it was, but I remember the volatility on corn was 31%. We're 19 this year. We are cheap compared to what it was. So we've got several people looking towards the 80. So is the 80 the right one? I don't know. I had 75 because it was the majority when I was working on this. All right. So what we got here in the supplemental coverage option, remember it's a shallow loss that is handled by the insurance companies through the agencies. And it is defined as starting at that same 86% that the ARC comes at, and it goes down to your personal level of coverage. So, as my friend Dr. Barnaby from Kansas State University says, Fran, ARC is the right thing. I said, Art, why do you say that? He says, well, first of all, the PLC isn't going to pay in 14. You want a bird in the hand, don't you? Well, maybe. Let's think about this, Art. And the second thing is, the only reason you would possibly take the PLC is so you have the right to buy the SCO. And the guys in Iowa and Illinois, these big corn states, got these giant yields, 170, 180s, whatever they are. They're buying 85% at the same price you guys are paying for 75. Because we have greater variability. So the cost of the insurance is higher in our region. They're buying 85. So if you have an SCO, they go from 86% county down to 85. It doesn't do much for them. So that's the reason. But I said, what about your wheat market? I said to him. The majority of wheat people are 70, maybe 75. He says, well, wheat people got to go to the SCO. It's cheap to have that county coverage. And he says, I'm not so sure that's not what we have up here in the northwest Wisconsin. I'm not telling you it's the absolute catch-all, but it's an inexpensive county-based policy to overlay your personal policy. All right, let's take a look here. So what we did here, you notice this yield is a little different. We had 139.4 on the other screen, 5-year Olympic average. We're at 136.4. What I did was I took the exact number. Oh, by the way, it's not available for 14. This all came about too late to have this stuff put together for the crop insurance season. So what I did is I said, we'll use the 2014 projected yield, because now the RMA is setting out projections instead of the FSA or others figuring these different yields. So we got a multitude of different yields. I'm using the 136.4. I don't want to paint this thing too good. I just want it to be what it is this year. And we're taking spring price. I said, if we have the same spring price as we in 2015 in February as we did this year, that's what I'm just trying to use. And then I put in this 360. I just throw numbers together. We can throw any numbers in here you want. I use 360 because last year we dropped 22%. I don't know if it's right or not, but I just want to demonstrate, and we'll change them for you. So if we take the 136 and multiply it by the higher of the spring or fall, February or October value, you get $630. The guarantee is 86%. We got a little consistency across these programs now. Now, the expected county revenue at your 75%. So I'm going to take the 136.4 times the higher of these two times 75%. That's what your underlying insurance is going to be, kinda. Because you may not be exactly 136.4. You might be 120. You might be 140. You might be 170. But I believe they are going to use this level on these numbers. Therefore, your underlying insurance, it kicks in at 472. So, what is the potential? The maximum is from here to here, $69. Now, if we put in the actual yield that we just had last year, what does it do? 110 at 360 means we got 397. We can't earn, 397 from the 472, 541, excuse me. From the 541 is a lot more than 69, but we can't go over that number. All right. So in an ugly, ugly situation, like we had just last year, you can get up to 69 bucks on this overlay. It's a county overlay on top of your personal policy. Can't have a county on top of a county, so you can't come in here and lower your ARP policy down and then get this lower cost one. Can't do that. It's got to be on a multi-peril crop insurance contract. If you're doing RP contracts, it settles on the RP. If you're doing RP with the harvest price excluded, then we aren't going to look at the harvest prices to see how it is. And if you do a yield protection underlying policy, we're only going to look at production. With all that being said, we're going to do RPs. Fairly certain of that. Now, we can go into the next year, and I just kept these numbers steady, and I moved some numbers up or down. These could have been any solutions, in all honesty. These could all be 2015 solutions. I just dropped in new numbers just to show you, if you have 136 and we go to 4 1/4, and you have 110, they all pay. They all pay pretty good. Sig, you want to change some of these numbers now for me? All right. Now, if we have the 5-year Olympic yield at the end of the year, and we drop our 22%, we get $40. Sig, you want to change something else? If we go to 120 bushels to the acre, let's go to 139.4 up here. Okay. If we go from 375 to 4 1/4, we go up. We go to 0. Because what happened? We're 3 bushels higher, and we got a higher price. We didn't have a problem. 139.4 here, say. All right. Let's notice here. Steady yield, huge difference in price. Now, who in this room truly impacts the national corn price? I don't think so. But does a group of farmers across Iowa or Illinois and their production affect corn price? Yes. It's directly correlated in the grain belt. Low yields, higher prices. High yields, lower prices. We have a different animal here. We can have what we just came out of in 2013. We can have a poor yield, and we can have what's perceived as a poor price. And if that's the case, we had our $60-some here. All right? If we have a 2012, a monster price and a monster yield, hallelujah. I don't care what you did, you made the right decision. You just farmed well and you were in the right spot. Mother Nature smiled on us, and it just devastated the Corn Belt. They can go up, you know, they're not going very far in their net revenue. We can have wonderful years and absolutely tough years. Hence, our 75% RP policy costs as much as their 85. Those are the reasons that some of that happens. Sig, you want to make a few more changes here? You notice if we go way up, let's just have our yield come down a little here. Say, let's go down to 120. All right, 115. All right, you go to 115 and prices drop 70, but let's go into way up. You know, anything can happen in our yield and our prices. So what I'm suggesting is that these are very random in our region of the country. They're very random. So you got to take a look at what do they do for us. Let's change our coverage level. Let's just give you a little idea. Here's a boneheaded idea, possibly, but maybe it's a bell ringer. And I'm just starting to research this. And what it is here is that, you know, you guys are going to start thinking about that irrigated, non-irrigated issue. What happens if we come in at 50%? And then we decide to overlay it on the county? Because I want somebody to help me pay my water bill and my electric bill. And if I'm taking care of that huge risk, is there a way for me to profit by it? So let's take a look at a 50. Let's run some numbers here. And what does it do? Well, it lowers your overall coverage. I'll tell you what, you're not going to get paid. You're not going to have a 50% loss of production under your irrigation unless you've got a single unit and you get hailed on at pollination time till it beats it into the ground. It's just not likely to happen on corn. You know, so you're saying there's not a lot of risk. Well, I'll tell you what, that 50% policy doesn't cost very much, but it buys you the opportunity to buy the supplemental coverage. And if you got the supplemental coverage, all of a sudden, hey, this will pay something here. What I'm trying to point out here is that this has some possibilities to overlay your insurances. I'm not certain of it yet. These are decisions we have until this time next year to make. The decision you really need to make is your ARC or PLC selection at the FSA office coming up. And one of the things that I read this morning, and it was very, very important, is that to the best of my knowledge, you can select ARC for the soybeans on your farm. And you can pick the PLC for corn, if you agree to settle on the county numbers. If you want to settle on your own personal numbers, it's either all ARC or all PLC. And I'll stand up here and tell you that if there's a PLC payment on soybeans, we're all in a world of hurt. Because if we run soybeans down to $8.40 a bushel, to where it starts to pay under PLC, and you take that number, you divide it by whatever ratio you want to have, 2 times for corn, or 2.5, or 3 times for corn, that puts corn at a pretty ugly value. So we've got some issues happening if we do that. So my gut feel is, you might want to select the county settle, buy my farm, and I would give real strong consideration to thinking about the ARC and the soybeans. And I still got to scratch my head under the corn. So we're going to have some more research and some more data, and we're going to collect a lot more, just to give us, the chance. Because you got a lot of money invested in corn, and I'll tell you, you got to make the right decisions, Steve. We're in the loop. What else we got here, Sig? Oh yeah, we're going to try to compare the ARC to the PLC, and whether we should overlay it with the SCO. All right. So we started at the 75. And to do this, we have to have a projection of the moving average, the marketing year average price, We have to have a projection of what we could have for a final accounting yield. And to work the SCO, we have to have the December futures in February compared to the December futures in October. And we have to have some sort of a base county yield to make all this work. So all these yellows are our variables. All right, now let me kind of sort this out. What I did here, essentially I said, in this choice, on this screen, I said we're going to look at bearish price and normal yields. And what does this do for us? Bearish price and normal yield says that the ARC pay you at 201, the PLC 239, and if you put the PLC, overlay it with the SCO, you get $300. Based on the county ones, 34, 40, 51 average. All right, so what it says is that if you expect prices to get ugly, the PLC will overcome the ARC payments under normal yields. Next one, Sid. All right, the next one is if we have a bullish scenario and a normal yield. ARC kicks butt. Plain and simple. If you're projecting normal yields, no reason to be up or down, and you expect prices to rise over the next 5 years, take your ARC and run. That's what kicks butt. Okay? Let's take a look. If we have a bullish price, but now we're going to drop some yield, how's this going to play out? Bullish price and a down yield. Well, we got bullish price, so what happens to PLC? We never drop below 370. We get nothing. The ARC wins. The PLC, we didn't have any losses, but we had some county overlay payments. So this is just another situation where we did bullish price and poor yields. The county overlay, the shallow loss, helped but it didn't bring us up to the ARC level. Now we got a big yield, and not huge yield, by the way. These are all well within our range. And we had a little better price. This is what we want when we're farming here. And, you know, after it's all said and done, it don't matter. If you get good yields and you got good prices, they don't pay. None of these pay. Okay? And let's take another one. So now we're going to have a bad price and a bad yield. And a bad price and a bad yield says that, well, we didn't have a bad enough price because I kept it at 410, 370. So I didn't move these bad prices down below my reference price until 16. So the PLC didn't do quite as well. The ARC did a little better. But when I overlay a bad price and a bad yield onto this, the PLC and the supplemental coverage option, the overlay of the insurance kicks butt. And the final one, what's the last one we had? We got a bearish yield, bearish price, and we got a good yield. Bearish price and a good yield. When we have an up yield, it really hurts the ARC. You get some money, but it really hurts it. When we have prices dropping off and we have good yields, the PLC kicks butt because it is not affected by the county yields at all. It's strictly a price thing. And because we had such a good up yield, we never got any supplemental coverage payments because it equals here. All of these calculations on the SCO are based on what University of Illinois tells us how it's going to settle. It's very linear. Just like when you have your yield, your personal yield, 120 bushel an acre, $5 a bushel, $600 revenue, 75% coverage, $450 guaranteed. Illinois shows that they're taking the county yield and the market year price and just extending that out and multiplying it by 86% and says your coverage yield. My friend Dr. Barnaby says, Fran, that is not right. Well, I tell you, Dr. Barnaby says it's going to pay the same way as the ARP or the former GRIP policy is going to pay. And there are payment factors within that contract that really enhance the payments once you hit your deductible. Once you hit that deductible, you go from 100% down to 86, you hit the deductible and you start going down, the ARP or the GRIP had very large payment factors built in. And it increases these SCO payments rather sharply by 30 or 40%. It's significant. I'd rather be conservative in my calculation here. It will be at least this good and possibly a lot better. But I cannot get them to agree. And Dr. Barnaby says, well, I've talked to the congressional aides that are working on this, and he says it's going to be just like ARP. Well, I don't have resources at Illinois, but their examples are very clear to what I gave you. So this is the conservative side. So that's my comment on this. Ultimately, there's no doubt in my mind that the supply and demand will prevail. Overall, if we have less production, if we decrease our carryout from one year to the next, it's a very rare time when we decrease our carryout that we don't rise in price. I mean, if you want to look at one number out there, just look at the final ending stocks from year to year to year. And when they're going down, prices are going up. And when they're going up, prices are going down. Ultimately, it'll be supply and demand. And I think there'll be a lot of questions about who's doing what.